here we are. I'm Tom Osman, and this is Whatever Comes Next, the podcast where I explore the world of underground and independent music making. And on today's episode, on today's special 100th episode, I'm talking with Dave Brenner of Earsplit PR and Gridfailure, Steve Austin of Today is the Day and Supernova Records, Greg Meisenberg of Nefarious Industries and A Fucking Elephant, Urlo Louisa and Poia of Malleus Rock Art Lab, as well as Ufomammut and Supernatural Cat between them, Dan Emery of Black Matter Mastering, as well as bands like Thetan, and Andreas Kohl, label owner of Exile and Mainstream, as well as various other different roles that he's had all through the music industry. So this is indeed a special episode, and huge thanks to Dave Brenner of Earsplit PR, because basically he coordinated this whole thing. And I have to say that as there are various different PR folks that I owe a debt of gratitude to, both for this podcast and for the different music that I've covered over the years in general, Dave and Liz, the husband and wife team that run Earsplit PR, have been hugely supportive throughout my time covering various different bands. So huge thanks to both of them in general, and huge thanks to Dave specifically for helping to coordinate this episode. So it was my idea that I wanted to do something special for this 100th episode. I wanted to make it themed. And given that, in essence, this podcast is all about exploring underground and DIY music, I thought that it made perfect sense to put something together that was specifically focused on DIY music. So in total, I guess there's about 6 hours worth of interviews that I did for this episode. What I did a bit differently this time round, usually I'll go into each interview with certain common questions that I might pull from, but I tend to like to vary things a fair bit. I went into this episode actually with a fixed set of questions that I wanted to ask everyone. Something else to mention for this episode, I have created a Patreon page. So partly with all of the extra interview content that I have in mind, if you go to Patreon and you are generous enough to sign up to pay £5 a month, you will get all of these interviews in full. All hour or so long interviews, each of them more or less are. There's all kinds of really fascinating stuff that came out of it, all kinds of interesting stories from the different people that I talked to about their journeys through the musical world, different insights of people who are in the US or various different countries in Europe. Andreas Kohl from Exile and Mainstream is Germany-based. Urlo, Louisa, and Poia are in Italy. They all have interesting different takes. They've all got a variety of different experiences, whether it's working in PR, writing for magazines, label owners, musicians, touring artists. It's, I think I managed to get a really great spread between them. And if you want to go and support on Patreon, you can get the full interviews for each of them. What I'm also going to be doing from this point forward, I've never been quite sure what the sweet spot is for interview lengths. I think for some people, like a 30-minute, 45-minute interview is the maximum they want. I've tended to feel like I didn't really want to chop anything out of interviews in the past, because I thought that everything that I got from people was valuable, insightful, and interesting. Sometimes those interviews have gone over an hour long. So from now on, what I'm going to be doing is basically these free public episodes that go out, I'm going to limit to 40, 45 minutes, and anything that goes on for longer than that is going to be available on Patreon. I'm also going to make available to patrons a timetable of which episodes are going to be coming up. And furthermore, I'm going to give information about people that I'm going to be interviewing in the future. And so for patrons, if there's someone that I'm going to be talking to that they're a particular admirer of and they have some questions that they want to ask to them, I'm going to give you an opportunity to actually pass on questions to me that I can then ask my interviewees. So maybe there will be more goodies in the future. There's no tiers. That's just it. If you would like to support this project that I have going on, that would be awesome. But I am equally delighted if you are just along here on YouTube or Substack or wherever else this podcast is, just to follow along and enjoy the conversations and hopefully get some useful insights. Apart from this episode, I am also, as well as having the full-length episodes on Patreon, I am going to do a kind of a coda episode to this, which is going to come out in the next week or two, with a particular question that I asked everybody that I got some great stories from. So that'll be there just as part of everything in Patreon, but there's also going to be an extra little bonus episode that's going to pop up here when I get round to it, because I thought this particular question and the stories that I got from it were very cool. But as I say, there was tons of extra interview content that I didn't get the chance to put into this episode, and that also won't fit into this little bonus episode. So if you are compelled, or if you're intrigued by the idea of signing up and getting the full-length episodes, there will still be plenty more for you to get to listen to or watch that will be for nobody else. So in terms of all the different people I'm talking to, I will put various links into the description of how you can follow them and see what they're doing. You can follow me on all social media at Tom Osmond Sounds. You can go check out what I'm doing musically on my website, tomosmondsounds.com, where I have links to my various different musical projects and writings about what I'm doing myself. I am, as I've said in the last couple of episodes, going to be on Amp-Wall. I am still in Thailand. I am in fact leaving today to go back to the UK, so I will have that set up soon enough. And I guess there is nothing left to be said but Dave Brenner, Steve Austin, Greg Meisenberg, Urlo, Louisa, Poia, Dan Emery, Andreas Kohl. Thank you all so much for your time. The first interview being with Dave Brenner of Earsplit PR and Gridfailure. So, Dave of Earsplit PR, take it away. Hello, Dave.
What's up, man?
I was kind of umming and ahhing a bit about where I wanted to start, but I think actually the first question I want to ask you, what does DIY music mean to you? And would you say that you are within that world?
I personally am extremely rooted in that world. I think there's a fine line between, when you're creating art of any sort and how that art is intended to be, received or digested and what you're trying to get out of it. With me personally, musically, I don't really ever expect anybody to consume or purchase or digest or whatever the music that I create. If they do, I am thankful for it. I enjoy it. I like reading reviews of my stuff, even if it's a bad review or something like that. But that's my personal taste. I think you should be creating music for your own enjoyment, creating art for your own enjoyment. Now, that said, how do you go on tour, half of the year if people aren't consuming your music? So, you can't put out something totally indigestible as I normally do with my own audio output and then expect, why isn't everybody covering this? Why am I not on the cover of Kerrang with this, falling down the stairs type of music? And it's so, if you're trying to go out and, tour, it becomes even more difficult. The more extreme or removed from the mainstream or whatever you are, the harder it is to, to actually promote it and live off of it and things like that. So I guess to the root of your question, you should be making music for yourself. Now, if that comes from a place where it is very accessible and digestible naturally, then, then great. But I also see people, an artist chasing that top hit, that, best record of the year, wanting to be the headlining band at the festival, everything. You can't do that without cutting some creative corners, limiting your creativity or your art in some way, because it's just generally never going to be 100% marketable, without labels or someone telling you or directing you how to do it. Most underground labels and independent labels and stuff we work with don't have a lot of artistic control in that way. They'll have control over how the campaign is run, how something's promoted, their release schedule and stuff. They're not normally going, "Hey, you have to change your cover art," unless it's just a piece of shit, and they're just like, "I'm not putting money into this." There's certain things where people are like, "This is my label, and I have to have something in there." But there's not a lot of creative control when it comes to people who are doing DIY labels and stuff like that, because they're doing it out of a passion too. Of course, they're trying to move their units and make their money back, and you know everybody wants to just be able to pay their mortgage or their rent on their art or their passion. So there's just a lot of different ways of looking at it, I suppose. But having your own artistic integrity at the forefront of your whole purpose for doing it, I think, is what makes it, DIY. You're not, you're going to release it, you're going to record it and release it no matter if you have a label covering a bunch of costs or you're just throwing it on Bandcamp at midnight because you finished it. It's for you to, do it your way.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's say a hypothetical situation. I don't know, maybe you've been in this situation before. You're at like a coach station or a train station or an airport, and you're just sitting there and you start making conversation with someone and they ask what you do. How would you describe what you do?
It becomes a convoluted question because of all the different ways that we are immersed in music and the way I am immersed. Like Earsplit itself, when I say what I do for my, my career, I guess. I tell people it's publicity, it's promotions, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, cool. What the fuck is that?" Like, we labels and artists hire us to promote upcoming records, and I mean tours and whatever else in sync with that. And, when the bands are, so and so announces new record on so and so label, and here's the first single, video, and pre-orders. Or we're writing all that stuff all day. We're taking liner notes and bands' bios and turning them into press releases. We are promoting songs from albums and pre-order all the information that when you see Lambgo premiered a song today or whatever, and stream it here. We're doing all that. We're sending out newsletters to industry people all day long, to writers, to media, to magazines, to bloggers, all forms of journalism, freelancers, people around the world. And those people are reposting our news or writing back and saying, "We'd like to cover this band." And then we set up the interview, just, stuff we're doing here, all the interviews, we do with you, we do for print. And yeah, usually we work with a record for 2 to 3 months ahead of its release, sometimes more. Sometimes people just drop a record and we have to kind of like hit the ground running, and it's all over the place. But that's the bulk of it, is of what Earsplit is. We're promoting the records ahead of time and through release. We're promoting the tours, promoting the videos, and basically driving traffic to the material, to the music, to the label, to the host site if it's some kind of premiere or whatever. So that's it. It's a lot of social media these days. It's a constantly evolving landscape. Anytime media or technology changes, just like anything else, it affects us. So we have to, kind of keep our core work goal in mind, but change with the times and kind of flex with the technology and everything. So it's not like necessarily like a 30-year-old template that we can follow. And every artist and every label has their own plans and their own expectations, and it's a lot of flexibility. We're kind of a middleman, between the media and the artist and label, and we're just kind of, what I mean, taking that info out there to the media to give it to the public.
How precarious is it if you, and it's not necessarily just being a publicist, but from your point of view, if you want to dedicate yourself to like strange, unusual, non-mainstream music, how financially precarious is that?
It's both. You can definitely, make more money doing plenty of other things, in any spectrum of life beyond music or art. You can also work in, mainstream music and everything, but it's just like everything else. Like, you see now with you know, the, the tariffs that, are now, taxing everybody, and everything goes up $1, $2, $3. That hits everybody. That's not anybody in one tax bracket or whatever. And then industries change and disappear. I mean, we're watching AI come out with like, every day AI can do this now. Oh, we're using AI to do this now. And that's besides the creation of AI and more tech jobs, that's jobs going out the window. So we've, I would definitely not say that we are, by any means well off, and we live in a very expensive corridor. So it is a struggle, just like most people. It's a very working class sort of job or whatever, but we've also found it to be pretty resilient. We moved out here and took over a house and everything in the middle of the housing crisis in 2008, when we saw, millionaires losing everything, entire companies folding up, entire towns, shutting down. It was just, millions of people losing their homes, that whole flex rate mortgage thing. And we were able to move, from Brooklyn out here and take on a lot more bills and responsibility and the mortgage and everything else against the grain, working with, Earsplit and Underground. Liz was still a Metal Maniacs at that point editing, but it was still two metal jobs, two music industry jobs. COVID, everybody we know who works in the service industry, bars, bands, everybody we know was out of work and like, hoping for another stimulus check and everything else. And we had to shift because all of our bands on tour had to come home and not tour. You couldn't press records. There was all these factors that made it seemingly impossible to, create, manufacture, or promote music. But within weeks, people were, forming solo projects. They were releasing, stuff on Bandcamp that, unreleased records. They were, live streams. All of a sudden, there were all these brand new ventures, and we had to adjust to that. And, we had the fortunate, company here that we run. We were able to, work all the way through COVID. And we knew people that couldn't work for 2 years, so it's like anything there. You can always second guess yourself and be like, well, I could be, working half as much and making twice as much doing this. But yeah, but then you're still working for somebody else. And if, you screw up at work or they decide they're downsizing, you're out and you might have a couple of weeks or so, there is a sense of security in that sense to it, that we just like, it's our own thing. So we can, I could branch into, a line of farm products or something, you know what I mean? Like start making leaf blowers, Earsplit leaf blowers or whatever. We have our company now. We have this thing that can expand into whatever we want to, if we want to, just try some other, work something else into it. Like I could try to get more into video production and music production and other elements of actually creating. And, we have this platform where, that will hopefully feed these other new, avenues if we ever decide to pursue them.
And I was thinking, like, kind of shifting the focus a little bit. If we imagine, let's just say, a bunch of friends in 2025, passionate about weird outsider music, they decide they're going to start making music together. They want to form a band. They want to, play shows, maybe want to like release a record, put some music out there. If you sort of think about how the musical landscape was like 20 plus years ago, how would you sort of say that the opportunities are now compared to 20, 30 years ago?
Incredibly different on the surface. I mean, I was in bands in the 90s and, early 2000s. There was, not that there was no internet, but there weren't 4 computers in every household connected to this, every like 1 out of every like 7 friends would have a computer and an email address and stuff. And then, and like way back when, it was tape trading. It was, it was word of mouth. It was playing shows. It was getting in with the local scene. It was trying to steal fans from your favorite, or, pirate your favorite bands. It was just, everything was in print. It was, you were tape trading. You were sending things in the mail. The word of mouth was just, that's why it was like local scenes everywhere until you were a national band. It was like if you were on tour all the time, you were playing through all these areas, but it wasn't like you could just, make a demo tape and have it circulated. You know what I mean? You had to get, that's why labels were so important back then, because that was the way, that was the delivery method for like how everybody was getting your music. Now anybody in the world can just simply, like, I could finish a song while I'm talking to you and have it on Bandcamp or whatever before we're done with the interview. It's just that easy. You can just hit publish and it's out there. Getting that to other people besides the people who are going to get the notification that follow you or on social media, whatever. Getting it beyond there is still the difficult aspect of the whole thing. It's so the technology has changed, but the goal is still the goal. Like all this technology and all this ease of access makes it easier for someone to promote themselves or get out there or be heard, but it also now you have thousands of bands releasing their music every day. It watered down the field too. So it's not like everybody has a one up now. It's like you're still you can just have the possibility to reach more people instead of like six people in your hometown now have your demo tape. Someone in India and UK and California might have your demo that night. It's changed a lot in that aspect, but you still, you still, nobody just goes and puts a record online and they're like hot shit. You know what I mean? You still have to get out there and, get all the cool magazines to tell everybody else how cool you are before you're, you know what I mean? Like top of the heap. It makes it even more, you see just endless amounts of music, genres that didn't exist last week, crossover of this and that, and resurgences of things that you thought were, new metal's back, and it's crazy how things kind of recycle, like, but yeah, technology is just constantly changing, and it makes it ever more difficult to cut through that heap. That's why labels who have a very specific sort of audience or whatever. I mentioned 20 Buck Spin earlier and like Profound Lore and some of these, they're like basically one man operations that started out having a passion for music and worked somewhere else in the music industry or something and decided to go. And now it's like this full time thing. And most people, I'm not saying everybody that follows either of those labels or many other similar labels are you're automatically going to love or buy everything that they put out, but there's like a 90% chance you're going to like something on 20 Bucks Spin if you like the last like 10 records they've released. It's just one of those things. Profound Lore also, like, they're both very extreme and they both branch out into some other terrain, but they have very dedicated fan bases, and it's that's how Relapse Records was one of the first extreme metal labels I got into. That was right in my hometown back in the 90s in Millersville. And I remember getting there that first time I got a Relapse catalog and looked through, I was like, what the fuck is all this stuff? Like, what is Exit 13? And like, who are these insane Monostat 7? Like, who are these fucking bands? And then you listen to it, you're like, what's even going on here? And it would just, it was intriguing. And Relapse was one of those labels that was one of those first extreme underground labels that had one of those completely dedicated fan bases that was just into it, that wanted to hear what was coming next, and
Yeah.
it's, so that publicity, all these facets, you know what I mean, getting radio play or getting someone to carry a record, all those are elements of getting. There is no one thing that sells your band, makes your band, or makes it get out there. So if you're going to take it on yourself and do this completely DIY, you have to put a lot more work into it than if there's a label handling it. Now, a label might recoup a lot of their costs, so you might never see a penny, but they're, or not for years until they're recouped, because they're the ones fronting the money to press your record. They're the ones shipping it out. They're the ones paying for the returns that are coming back broken. They're the ones pressing the shirts. They're the one, they're handling all the costs. They're paying the publicist or radio promotion or the whatever. So, a lot of the work is done for you once you're picked up by someone like that. But you're also, if you put out your own record, you can see, that one Bandcamp seller's, $6, $8, $10 right there in your pocket that isn't split or going to the label or whatever. So it's, it depends on how DIY you want to be. You can really do everything from the ground up, from inception to, putting the record into people's hands 100% yourself. And it's satisfying, but it's also, like I said, it's like 4 times the work, because there isn't a publicist, you're doing it. There isn't a pressing, product manager, you're pressing it. You know what I mean? It's no one to blame if it gets screwed up, because you were the one that approved the masters. It's, you take on all of that responsibility yourself. So
Thinking about the next year, 2026, and thinking about DIY underground independent music, is there anything that springs to mind that you're particularly excited about, whether it's something that you're working on or just something else that is coming on the horizon?
a new year is always, it's just another flip of the calendar, but something about everybody burning out towards the end of the year and all the year end lists and just, having not been on vacation all year and spent 12-hour work days all year and everything. There's something cleansing about having the holidays and being able to wipe out some files and everything else and starting a new year fresh. I'll play it back the other way. I'm fearful for what next year will bring in a lot of ways, just because of the rise of artificial intelligence. So many bands that used to come over here and tour all the time can't even fathom doing it now, financially, and because they're afraid of being locked up or deported. There's a lot of seriously crazy shit going on in our country right now with this administration that we never would have thought we would deal with in our lifetimes. And every time you say like, "Oh, that can't happen here," that can't happen here, that's not going to happen, it does. So who knows what the future of music is? There's people getting censored and flagged for free protest for beliefs, So who's to say what could happen? So I think that's another very important aspect of music is art, because anytime the political situation gets the world turned up, art comes out. More bands happen, more people stand up, more people create music against that, And so every time there's like political turmoil, you're going to see some angry music. You're going to see the punk scene rise. You're going to see more DIY.
Next up, I spoke with Greg Meisenberg. I think before this interview, I'd never actually spoken with Greg directly, but the closest link that I had was back in episode 29. I spoke with John Ehlers of Bangladeshi, who are on Nefarious Industries, which is a label founded and run by Greg. And Greg is also a drummer. He's featured in a variety of different bands. I think he's part of a variety of different bands right now. Perhaps one of the most prominent bands for him, or one of the bands that he's most closely associated with, is A Fucking Elephant. If you've never listened to the band before, a great opportunity to see what a fantastic drummer Greg is. There were some issues with the connection for this interview. So you'll find that at the beginning of the interview, there is video if you're watching this on YouTube. Unfortunately, we had to go audio only for some of this interview. So you will notice that the video for Greg will disappear for a while, but you'll still see me if you're watching this on YouTube, and the rest of the guests following on from this conversation. On to Greg. What does DIY music mean to you, and would you consider yourself to be part of that world?
I definitely consider myself part of that world. I would say, it sounds silly, but, to me, DIY is kind of the abbreviation says it all, do it yourself. I think that there's many levels of doing something yourself. That doesn't mean you have to do it alone. I think a lot of DIY musicians, or I know a lot of DIY musicians who they stay away from almost like, any organized kind of stuff. And that's their idea of DIY. For me, like, I think it just comes down to community. When the community grows large enough to become, like a corporate record label, then it stops feeling DIY, because it's not like no one person or one entity can do everything themselves. But in addition to that, you stop being connected to what is being done on your behalf by other people. And I think that's where the boundary is for DIY. Like, some bands need a label, some don't. Some bands benefit from a manager, some don't. Some bands like to do their own booking. Some bands hire a booking agent. But no matter how you configure it, when you're like intimately connected to what's happening and to what the choices that you make and like the choices that are being made, let's say for you, or like the choices you're making with the people you partner with, to me, that's still DIY. And it kind of ends when you don't understand or don't have like much control over decisions that someone else is making for you based on what benefits them instead of what benefits like the community or your band or like the whole picture. So, it to me, like that in a nutshell, like there's the, getting in the van, playing a bunch of basement shows DIY, but I think running a label can be so super DIY. I mean, I'm the catalog's in a warehouse, but you know, I'm employing services that I need as I need them in order to provide the services that I want to provide. But I'm still very intimately connected with everything that's happening. It's still, the label's still a one-man operation. So to me, that feels really DIY. Like I'm the one making all the decisions. I think financially too, could be a pretty big factor. I think when you fully fund yourself, that's pretty DIY. And if you choose to, if your craft is being elevated and elevated and elevated, and you're doing things on a bigger scale, I'm not there. So I'm sure maybe, by some definitions, it stops being DIY at some point. But I think, when you're financially responsible for everything you're doing for the sake of your art, it's pretty DIY to me.
That makes sense. So you've alluded to the label that you're running, Nefarious Industries, and obviously you've had a bunch of different musical projects that you've been involved with as a musician. By the way,
Yeah.
Love your drumming with a fucking elephant. Like,
Thank you.
because I often think and say to people, like, when it comes to bands that play, it's not just metal or like, anything sort of like progressive or complex or let's say kind of like rhythmically unusual, a lot really rests on the drummer. And
It really does.
yeah, you do a lot of really cool stuff, for want of more
Thank
like
you.
exact terminology when it comes to a
No, it's,
fucking elephant. So
my pride and joy, like that band was my baby with Matt, the other guy, the guitarist. And that band started the label. We started the label to put out our own releases, and it so quickly morphed because we started it with another band that we were doing split with, El Drugstore. And so the label was started by 5 people, all in bands, all touring DIY musicians. So that was always very much the ethos, and we started it because we knew there wasn't going to be a whole lot of big interest in what we were doing. No one's going to throw money our way. We wanted to support it the way we felt was appropriate at the time. So we started this label, and it just snowballed into working with our friends naturally, other bands that we were connected with in the scene. And then I kind of took it, way further than the other guys planned. And then I took it way further than I ever thought I could take anything. And it's been like 15 years, and I feel like, I've definitely hit some ceilings in that time, but it's been a very amazing experience. And it started just from wanting to play my own music and turned into helping others support their music.
and in terms of that process and the evolution that you've gone through of playing in bands and then creating the label and continuing to make music, was there a discernible point in that process where you went like, this is a career that I have in the music world?
I guess it's funny though, like, the term career is hilarious to me because like I guess I have a career in the music world, and I guess I also have a career in like the tech world. I'm a web developer. That's what pays the bills. But I feel like the underground DIY guy in both fields. I'm not, I feel like people who've been writing code for more than 20 years are like in management positions and own their own businesses. And that's not me. I stayed where I like to be, which is writing code, doing nerd stuff. And I made the same choice with music. I stayed where I want to be, which is like in the van as often as possible, playing shows. That's why I fill in for a lot of bands. Many of those bands are on my label, but I've filled in for, anybody who needs, a tour person. I've done, instrumentation like bass and drums, bass guitar and drums, but also like I go out as a merch guy, tour manager, whatever, driver. because I love being on the road. So even though I run a label, I kind of like the heart and soul of it for me is being on the road, playing shows, getting out there, like essentially the community part of it. The back end of running the label gets dull the same way as like being a project manager, gets dull. But like being on the ground, even if I'm not performing, like being at the shows, being in the van, hitting a new city every day on tour, that's what excites me. Just like getting my hands dirty with actual code still excites me after 20 years. But yeah, I guess like I fell into coding. I didn't like study it and I didn't intend for that to be my job, but then it happened. And to parallel that with the label, like it just felt like this hobby, like this cool thing I was doing. But then once you start getting emails from people you don't know from other parts of the world being like, hey, I got my hands on this release that you put out and we think our music would fit in your catalog and we would love to partner with you. And you're getting these emails. That's when I was like, holy crap, this feels like, still feels weird to say the term career, but started to feel like a real label. Like, and obviously we're not a big label in any sense, but it's definitely when what you're doing transcends your like circle of friends and your immediate connections, it starts to take on like this life of its own. And that's really cool. It's like really cool feeling. I'm sure you can relate with the work you're doing. Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. It's
I mean,
like
we're on different continents talking right now by
I know.
virtue of like what you do and what I do.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Now I wanted to ask you, so as you've obviously just said, you're doing the coding side of work to pay the bills. Was there ever a time where you thought like I could go all in on the music world side of things, or do you sort of see a path whereby you might be able to do that as, however precarious that might be?
Yeah, I've always wanted to go all in. Every day I'm like, holy crap, I want to quit everything and do this. So for sure the desire is there. And with the desire there, I've certainly mapped out many, paths and ways that this might be possible. But, you know, the current reality doesn't support it. I simply don't make enough, return on the investments I make. There's not enough money. Like even in a profitable year, and also I'm a touring musician, so even on a profitable tour, you come home with profits, but they're not profits that are going to like pay your rent for the next, 2 or 3 months, let alone this year. So it feels, we're in this like kind of environment where it feels super successful to come home and break even because you're like, holy crap, I just spent a month playing, music that many people consider highly unpalatable. And there was a bunch of kids and adults and all sorts of people like out there supporting it, hearing it, and interacting with it. So like I know there's people out there into this, but in the current environment, it's like I can't believe there's people out there that came out for this and like heard about this and decided they wanted to participate. And then when you come home, breaking even, you're like, wow, like I can't believe I sold enough t-shirts and CDs and vinyl to like pay for the stupid gas. So like that already feels successful. The part where you get to make enough money to pay the bills is like, that's a dream. I think it's possible. I think that I have selected a corner of the market that makes it more difficult, and I also think that, I think intrinsically, like when you do things for the love of, it's not like I make bad business decisions, but like when I do things for the love of, I'm not, and actually coming back to your question about DIY, I think that's a huge factor because DIY is more than just do it yourself. I think like a great way to define DIY is anyone who's doing art for the love of it. You're doing your craft because it like feeds your being, it's like part of who you are. It like you're connected to it like spiritually, not just financially. The second you start making decisions on how to turn a profit alone, everyone wants to turn a profit, but when you make that priority number one, you kind of lost everything else. that's one of the reasons it's difficult to make money in this industry, is because you're thinking, well, it would be so cool if this, thing I'm working on had these extra flip frills, but they cost a few hundred or a few $1,000s extra, and that's going to be harder to recoup. So if you choose to not do that, you may recoup money faster, but you've already decided to create a product that you don't think is as sick as it could be.
Yeah.
But if you do the thing you really want to do, it's going to cost extra money, and then you may not make that back. And that's the position I'm in all the time. And I'd rather keep making the coolest stuff that we can make. And that makes it, that's the primary obstacle in, paying the bills with music. At the same time, there's a freedom in not having to pay the bills with music, because I pay the bills with other stuff. So when it comes to the music, I'm not afraid to drop a few extra dollars in the creativity bucket to make something stand out or to experiment. You can't experiment without, spending money. So I do find a level of security in like not being a full-time musician whose livelihood depends on music or like releasing music or running a label. There's a freedom there.
No, I can definitely kind of recognize that trade-off. Having now talked about sort of some of the practicalities of a label and what it's like to be a touring musician, if you think about the landscape now, for like a new band, how would you sort of view the opportunities that band might have now compared to 20 plus years ago?
It's interesting because I think that it really depends on who you are and what you're trying to do, and like how you reach out, in your craft, because I think there's always opportunities. I know a lot of people who are like, they were more comfortable in the manual days, so like, even though they're surrounded by opportunities right now, they felt so much better about making a phone call to book a show. So because that's what they enjoyed, they were busting their ass in the 90s, booking shows, and no longer enjoy it now. And then there's people who are totally the opposite, like, I can send 100 emails today. I can't make 100 phone calls today, or I can't have 100 phone conversations today. So I think that even though there's opportunities, it's like, do the opportunities match what you're good at, like the areas where you excel at getting stuff done? But also another way to look at it, or another way that I look at it, is that I really, it's tough for me to, I know that there's artists who like, they record music, they release it, they have all these other avenues for getting music out and for finding fans and listeners. And it's amazing that there's opportunities today for like video and digital stuff. But like, I love playing music, so it's really difficult for me to look at it through any other lens, because there's nothing that can replace like the visceral connection of, a show, especially for, the styles of music that I'm usually involved with. So looking at it through that lens, I feel like the challenges are different, but the opportunities are the same. If you get out there and play shows, then you're gonna make waves. In the 90s, for example, and earlier, like before, Napster and shit, you had labels gatekeeping everything. So the only way you were going to make waves is by getting out there and playing shows, because you weren't necessarily going to land on the radar of like a major or anything, but you would have the opportunity to connect with a ton of people by getting out there and playing shows. And, that was the alternative to the mainstream culture of radio, etc. But then today, even though everything's different, in so many ways it's the same, because you have a million songs a day hitting Spotify. It's impossible to keep track of all the new music out there. So one of the ways that you can differentiate yourself is getting out there and playing shows, because you make a personal connection and it's very visceral. And I think of all the shows I went to as a teenager and how it like moved me, shaped me, totally like changed, my outlook, my life, all that kind of stuff. So I look at it through that lens, and in that way, it's the same. And maybe even certain things are easier. I would say the one thing that's easier nowadays is You can have a remote or like a part-time remote job. There are ways to generate cash flow digitally without your presence on site. And even like, with things like, like online classes and stuff, you can create programs and, subscription services. Like you can put your time into creating a program, and then your income isn't tied to your hourly time, in the real world. So that's the main advantage now. And I live that life. Like I'm a web developer for the last 20 years. I've been working remotely for 20 years. And the day I got my first remote job was that same day I bought a smartphone. And that same day I said to my band, we can tour now. Let's go hard. And we booked a European tour. I've been doing that. I've been taking advantage of that the whole time. So that would be, in my mind, the singular greatest advantage of being alive and doing music today.
Yeah, that's a really valuable insight. Thinking about the future, when you look at the landscape for underground independent DIY music, where do you kind of see things going? What do you see on the horizon?
Well, speaking for Nefarious Industries, for a while now, I've been trying to like simplify, if you will. Like there was a time when I was putting out a lot of releases because what I was able to offer to artists was different and less. And that's what, fit. Those were the matches that, were made, and it was a good time. But now it's like I at once have to conserve resources, but also I do have more resources that I can offer to artists who are willing to take advantage of them. So I've been trying to like consolidate, have fewer releases each year, and be able to focus more effort and like more resources on each release and each artist. So that's kind of, the future of the label. And case in point, this year, 2025, there's only been 3 or 4 releases announced compared to like just a couple years ago. I had like, there was a year with like 19 releases, and a year with like, several years with more than 10. So yeah, I'm kind of, trying to keep things chill, not spread myself thin. And I feel like, a lot of other people I know are in the same boat. Things are different after COVID. A lot of people's resources, bank accounts, just personal energy has been strained. Obviously, with touring, a lot of venues closed. My entire Rolodex from 2019 is like invalid as of 2021. And even though it's 2025, we're still like recuperating from the effects. So, another thing is I see people, like, especially recently, I see a lot of people pulling away from streaming services, especially Spotify. And I guess while that's not necessarily, news, for me, I have seen more people in my circles that I personally am in touch with, or like, bands that I'm aware of following, seen more of that happening in my sphere. So yeah, I think it's a sign of kind of getting back to the DIY thing. It's a sign of like artists are reclaiming their work in various ways, but like essentially they're making decisions for themselves and their creative product and pulling it out of the hands of the people or entities who are making decisions that we don't like, or making decisions like, everybody knows Spotify is less a music platform and more of just, like it's basically an advertising platform. We're trying to connect with people who appreciate our music, that's it. When you lose the more direct connection with your fans, because like, it's cool if like a Nefarious Industries artist song popped up while you're grocery shopping at fucking ShopRite or something, but like that's not what we're going for.
Yeah, that's pretty encouraging. I like that. I take some definitely take some positivity from that. Next up, I spoke with Today Is the Day frontman and Supernova Records founder Steve Austin, also producer for various different bands. One of my absolute personal heroes. I love Steve Austin and his music and everything that he stands for. I think he's incredible. So, my conversation with Steve Austin coming up right now.
Can't you see what's in your vision? see what's in your mind. I can't live in isolation. It's a lonely, lonely ride.
Steve, thank you so
Hey,
much.
nice to see you again.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if you would remember me. It was like a year or so ago, but yeah, it's great to have the chance to talk to you again. I wanted to ask you first of all, like, what does DIY music mean to you, and do you consider yourself to be part of that world?
I think I've come to the realization, especially lately, that I may be too much DIY. No, in seriousness, like I mean, I'm sure there's hundreds and thousands of other people that do this same thing, but like for instance, about a couple weeks ago when we put the announcement out about the new album, when we released the video for Never Give In, that's the title track from the new album, I realized later that day, like, God, like, not like I'm shooting for it or anything, but like if you think about it, self-funded, write it all, get together the people to record and rehearse it all, mix it all, edit it all, master it all, and then, create the front cover, as in me, with a photograph from my buddy Tim Slobin. And then down to the video, my son Hank shot the footage of me doing the lyrics. But like, as far as assembling and producing and directing that video, I did that, all of it. And that was just another odd circumstance of the DIY thing of like, we needed a video. We didn't really have a budget. And I had just learned Adobe Premiere Pro through a crash course working on a film score for my son, Hank. And so I only had like very minimum skills under my belt of like 2 or 3 days of me using that software. But it wound up being that I ended up making the video for that song. And it kind of struck me funny that at the end of that day, thinking about that from a DIY aspect of like, God, man, it's like not like I'm trying to, but like, I mean, if you want pureness from the artist of like, no middleman, only the person who makes the music or does it, I think this is the most extreme case of DIY that I've ever done, all the way down to literally making the freaking video, too. Obviously, a lot of DIY comes out of, too, you know, the financial part of having help do, with people doing stuff. But the more that I've been doing this, the more that I started to realize like, it's not just about whether somebody's helping you or not, about, you know, contributing money towards the cost of like, say, making a video or a recording or whatever else and stuff like that. I find the DIY thing to be more like just like the way I take care of my cars, is that like, if you do the repair yourself and you really care about it, and it's your thing that you're fixing or doing, I find that I'm going to get 100% satisfaction because I know that the person who did it cared like the maximum amount to get it right. And even in art and music and so forth, just the more that you do this, you realize so much. It's like, it's great to have outside help sometimes, but at the same time, if you are in a position where you're doing everything all the time, then win or fail, at least you know that whoever's doing it, gave it their all. They put their heart into it. They did the very best they can. and and it's the way I guess that you want it to be in the end. But um, yeah, so I feel like it's a major part of my lifestyle though, and it's got to do also with even like where I live at. You know, we live out where you got to fix everything yourself. So I fix literally everything, and whether it be electrical, plumbing, cars, the house, tools, equipment, studio gear, microphones, electronic stuff. A lot of that's out of necessity too, because of like where we live, you know. But also, again, a lot of it, because I've been doing it so long, is out of like a quality into things too. Of like, I just know that if I do it, I won't cut any corners, and I'll make sure that every little tiny thing is exactly right, so that if it's a car, it's safe to drive, or if it's an album, it's safe to listen to. I'm just kidding. It's never going to be safe to listen to, but but no, if it's an album, you know, that all the bases were covered, and again, win or lose, at least I know that there was nothing that got in the way of the original vision of like whatever's going on. But I will say the downside to all that is that there's only so much time, and when there's only one of you, it makes it really, really difficult. Like the last like week, I've been trying to get this 7-inch mixed down. That's the first 7-inch from the country album, and you know, because I wear many hats, many roles of doing other things when I'm at home, just a whole bunch of different things has come up here and there and here and there. I finished up the artwork to the layout a few days ago, and of course I did it instead of a graphic artist. And then and so that took up a lot of time. And then last night I got in there and I was really, really happy because the both the songs, "So Far Gone" and then a cover of "Waiting Around to Die" by Townes Van Zandt, both of them sound like really awesome. And so later today, I'll be able to do the final mix of both those songs and get them ready for this final 7-inch that's coming out with the first video from that in November. So I'm up against the deadlines. I got to get stuff done. And when you're DIY, if there was any downside about it, it's just the fact that you only got one of you and maybe multitudes of things going on, you know?
You've touched on some of the various different things that you do within music. And obviously you've got Supernova Records, and you've touched on the fact that you've recorded and you've produced other people. I'm wondering for you, was there like, and I understand as well, like looking at Supernova Records, like the mission statement is very much that it's about the art, it's not about financial gain. But at the same time, obviously, everyone has to eat, everyone has to pay for petrol. So I'm wondering for you, was there like a discernible point in your musical, or just like in your life, where you went, oh, this is a career?
Well, I, I would say this from the very beginning of doing it and whatnot, the whole making the music was a way to sort of do self therapy a little bit of trying to figure out things. Cause all the way back to like really younger, you know, my parents would be fighting, going crazy or something. And I would just like go down in the basement with my guitar and like a drum machine and start trying to like make songs up and play music and stuff. It's sort of like almost to make like an imaginary friend kind of thing, like where you could make something that you could relate to as if it was somebody else or whatever, like in making up a song or something like that. And later, when it got going, and you know, Today Is the Day was all formed and demos went out, and you know, this is the early 90s, like when a record label did matter. To us, the reason why a record label mattered, though, wasn't about like making money or anything like that. It was about what I was talking about earlier, is how can we get people to find out about Today Is the Day? And Well, record labels, they're pretty good at doing that because they buy ads and put the word out on the street, put you on tours, different things like that. And it was really funny because, like, when we did our first tour on Clusterfuck Tour a long time ago with these two bands, Chokebore and Guzzard, you know, the label AMREP gave us a box of Supernova t-shirts, Supernova, the first album. And I don't know how many there were. I'm guessing there was probably 150 of them or something like that. There might have been two boxes. And no one told these punk rock kids from Nashville that you're supposed to like sell that stuff. Like we thought they gave it to us to give it to people that liked the music. I guess you would say as a promotional item. And so, like, every show of that Clusterfuck tour, I don't think anyone paid for a T-shirt. Like the whole, if they did it, they didn't pay me because, like, every single person that I met, if they even said something kind about the show of like, oh man, that was awesome, or you guys were killer or whatever, I would just be like, hey, do you want a shirt, man? And reach over here and dig out a shirt that dude's size, give it to him, and say thanks. We had no idea, and I want to say near the end of that tour, Troy from Chokebore like said something to me because he saw me doing that, and he was like, hey man, you guys not like sell those shirts or whatever? And I was like, sell them, and I was like, why? And he's like, because it's merch. Like, you're supposed to like sell the t-shirts and whatnot. And I was like, well, that doesn't make any sense to me because, like, if they like the band and if they like the music, then I want to give them a t-shirt. Like, I didn't know any other way or think of any other way. Now, like with what you were touching on there, this was when I was 26 years old, and it was 1993 when a gallon of gas probably cost like $1. Everything was way, way different. Touring was way, way different. I mean, most of the people I knew back in 1993 didn't even have a job or anything. Like, it was like you could somehow people this got along and existed and survived or did whatever, just being punks and like living. And, you know, nowadays things are not the same like that. And the big difference is that it's not so much that you do it to make money or anything like that. To me, I do it to enable it to be able to happen. So like, looking at putting a new record out isn't about like, oh my God, we're going to make like so much money or something like that. It's more like, oh my God, if we can pay for this pressing and get it made so that a fan can buy it and listen to it and experience it, then that's a success, and it's the same thing with like the t-shirts and whatnot, by the time that you do PayPal fees, web hosting, paying to have the stuff shipped, every other thing, and especially if you don't charge that much for your merch, it really it doesn't make very much money, but like at the same time, it's enabling something to happen. It's enabling a fan that wants to have a Supernova t-shirt or a Temple of the Morning Star t-shirt to be able to have that t-shirt and wear it and feel proud about it because they love that music. The underground world is just very, very different, I think, in mindset from a lot of other parts of the entertainment world as far as like commercial music and mainstream music. I mean, my greatest reward in doing this is like whenever we go play a show, I think of different ones from this last tour where, in Louisville, there were 5 big, burly, grown men having a spiritual breakdown, crying to the point of almost like a nervous breakdown because the songs had an impact in their life so deeply that it hit them really, really hard when we were playing them live right there. And some of those guys come up to me and hug me and give some serious testimonials about how the music changed their life or helped get them through like really, really bad times. And when I hear that, there's the profit on anything. That's the profit of it all, is you work really, really hard and you put your heart and soul into the stuff, and you don't sell a million of anything, so you're never going to really like make a ton of money, but the impact is there where people feel it, and emotionally and spiritually it hits them hard, and then it makes every hour, second, and minute that I work on this stuff like more than worthwhile to doing it.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be amazingly rewarding to get like the amount of effort and emotion that you put into the music and then to get back from other people the impact that it's had on them to that degree. I can totally see how that would be really powerful. How do you kind of see overall the landscape of like what the opportunities are compared to like maybe 20 years ago for a new band starting out? It's like they want to go play live, they want to record a record, they want to like release it. How's it different?
I would say the number one thing is to believe in yourself and make the best stuff that you can make. That's the starting point of it. If you believe in what you do and you are comfortable in your own skin of your identity, be yourself. Don't want to be like anyone else. Just be yourself. Make that your edge and your weapon, that there's only one you, and your message and your music and ideas, it's different than everyone else's, especially if it's true and original to your own self. So starting at a starting point of that, it's cool to have heroes and people that you look up to get some kind of direction. But the most powerful artists or musicians are going to be ones where they're unique to themselves. They don't want to be anything else. They want to be themselves and express their message, whether people like it or they don't like it. Either way, at least it's a genuine, authentic message. The second thing is about doing what you're doing. Learn as much as you can. You're going to need to rely on yourself more than ever these days. There's no money in doing this for the most part. Once you've got your idea, find people who are like-minded with you about their expectations and goals about what they want to do. Do they just want to help you with a recording maybe and play on something, or do they want to work with you all the time on it? Art and music is supposed to be a good time. It's supposed to be something that brings you joy in your darkest times. So you definitely don't want to put it together and have any problems. But once you get ready to go do all this stuff, even though it may seem daunting, cover all your bases. Make your audio the best that it can be. Make your graphics the best that they can be. Make your videos the best that they can be. Go out and play shows and talk to people. Get to know them at the shows. If somebody cares enough to care about your music to even show up, I feel like you, at a minimum, owe it to that person to stop and hang out a minute, get to know people and whatnot. They're getting to know you musically. So, get to know them as a friend of the band or, a fan. A lot of it is just grassroots stuff and being kind to people and showing gratitude for them being into your music, because I never take for granted for 1 minute if even one person shows up. And that's because I have such a low negative self-image that I can't believe that anyone shows up at all. And like, so like if one person comes and they're like, oh my God, I listened to Temple of the Morning Star and it blew my mind or whatever. That blows my mind because that's just me making music, not caring if a million people liked it or zero people liked it. It was just how I felt and what I was experiencing and feeling and putting that out there. And so when another human grasp onto that and they care about it enough to leave their house, drive to come see me play at a show, well, yeah, you damn well bet I'm gonna thank them and hang out with them, you know. And if you do it right, your audience should be technically part of your band.
And next up, I got the triple insights of Urlo, Poia, and Louisa of Malleus Rock Art Lab and also Ufomammut and Supernatural Cat. Between them, an opportunity to get an Italian perspective of the underground music world.
And we are here. Okay, we are the three of us.
Oh, this is perfect. Well, thank you for joining me, Tom. Nice to meet you.
Nice to
Urlo.
meet you. Oh, yeah.
Luisa.
Awesome. So, the first question I'd like to ask you is, what does DIY music mean to you? And do you consider yourselves to be part of that world?
Well, surely we consider part of this world because, I mean, I think music is music, obviously. I think that everybody starts in a do-it-yourself way when it starts. Then probably things goes on different path. Like, for example, if I think, I don't know, about Beyonce, probably she took a different way from Ufomammut, for example. So let's say that speaking about ourselves, we grew up in a do-it-yourself way since the beginning because Poia and me are friends since 30 years, even more probably now. And we started playing together with a first band called Judicorda. And everything was around doing everything by ourselves, having the control of the music, the graphics, the imaginary about the band. And when we split that band and we started with Ufomammut, we decided to do the same way. And it's about 25 years that we try to do this way. So taking control of the music, trying to do what we want to do, what we want to play, the way we want, and so on. And also taking care of all the imaginary from the videos, the visuals, the covers, everything. And since now we have done this, and also the same thing goes in our little record label that is Supernatural Cat that we ran. The three of us are Malleus, and it's another do-it-yourself thing about seal screen poster art, always around music. We started the same way. And also with the label, we decided to do in a do-it-yourself way, trying to print, obviously not the record itself, but all the covers in a first limited edition version. So with the covers packaged and printed and everything by ourselves and printed, handcrafted, and so on. So let's say that we give a great importance to the do-it-yourself idea, basically because it's something that we started ages ago now, but we still try to do.
Yeah, we felt it was more natural since the beginning. And actually, to be honest, we tried as a band at the very first, after our first record, to rely on someone else doing the printing, the let's say the label for the record. So we say, so we can sign with this label and make things happen. But we were so disappointed by the treatment of the label that we decided to go back to our roots and start, as Urlo said, our own record label.
Yeah.
At the beginning with the collaboration with the Rocket Recordings from UK, but then we always wanted to take the control on the things we were doing. So every aspect of the music has been under our control.
Yeah. Also, now that as a band we are under Neurot,
Yes.
we choose them because they are musicians and they know what music is. So we discussed with them. We would like to do these things with our own label. So a limited edition, and they say, "Oh yes, that's a cool idea. Let's do it together." So it's like we expanded the idea with them, so we are not constricted by rules or whatever.
Yeah,
So
we are
totally free.
just like on the same level. We are just we join together to create something more powerful, let's say. But the idea is always to maintain control. And with Neurot, we always had this chance. They never asked about, no, you can change this, or maybe you can dress this way, or maybe we can do the record in October instead of November. We are totally free of doing whatever we want.
Yeah, I interviewed Steve Von Till a little while ago and talked a bit about Neurot, and I get that feeling from him that he's very much in that world, that kind of DIY world, and he's sensitive to what other artists would want to do to present their work. Whether it's the record label or having a band, in your shared experience, how difficult is it to sustain yourself financially dedicated to non-mainstream music?
Very difficult. Very much difficult.
Yeah, it's difficult, but we are good thieves, so sometimes a bank or whatever, it's no, I'm joking. No, it's quite difficult, but I mean, we are not the kind of people that has a goal to buy a Ferrari, for example. So for us, these are not the most important things in life. Maybe for us, I don't know, a Rickenbacker is better than a Maserati. And so we can, the amount of money you need in your life is different. And I mean, till now we are happy that we can do what we want. And
poor, but very happy.
Poor but happy, but not poor. I mean, we can do what we want, and then we have always invested the money for creating more. So let's say that yes, this is important to grow what we are doing, keeping the things in the best way.
Yeah, to have enough fuel for doing the next project. Yeah, and this is the things that keeps us alive. At the same time, yeah, we are saying that nowadays is more difficult because the prices are rising in every kind of aspect of our life. So it's more difficult nowadays than, like, let's say 10 years ago. Everything is changed. Also the musical field is different. Also the way you listen to music is different. But we always try to keep the idea of the human-made things that are more worthy. There's the soul of ourselves that reflects in music. So it's very important for us.
Thinking about the label, and so obviously you've got your experience with Supernatural Cat, and then you've got your experiences working with other labels in the past, and then you mentioned Neurot at the moment. When you sort of think about a record label, you know, so both in terms of the way that you want to run the label or you want to be treated by another label, do you have a sort of a model in mind where you're like, this is the way, like ethically, that a label should behave towards its act and behave towards the customers?
Yes, I mean it's mainly the way we work, that what we apply to the bands is what we would like to have from a label. So the total freedom, and moreover we give them the opportunity of having the record cover, so the imaginary for the new album, and we try to work with the band, not only for the band. So we release the music. We say, you give us the music, and we do the rest together. So that's the way we would like to work with. We always say to the bands, we have a sort of contract, but it's like, if you want to go with a bigger label that can give you more, you are free to do it, because you deserve it, and that would be great. So we just try to give freedom, and we want to have freedom, like for New Rot, as we said, is what, as a band, we received. When we signed with New Rot, we had different labels asking for Ufomammut, but we decided to go with them, even if probably the opportunities were smaller, but the idea behind the label was bigger for us. So in some way, smaller is bigger.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, you could more identify with the philosophy of the label.
Exactly.
And having touched on everything getting more expensive, something I'm still trying to sort of understand is what's going on in the world. And it's not just about record labels, but about postage, the costs of postage. Like, it seems anytime, whatever country you're in, whether it's the UK to Germany or Italy to the US, or like, postage costs have just got so expensive. What's your experience with this and your understanding of like how things have got to the stage they're at now?
Of course.
No, they are really, really expensive. Sometimes we have to calculate in advance how much it will be the shipments, because it's very, very expensive compared to the value we are selling the vinyl or the poster or everything. We are trying to keep this a little bit less of what we pay, because we don't want to overprice the records or the posters for this reason. It's not easy, and we are trying to put all this cost inside the production, but sometimes it's very, very, very difficult to have. And we don't know now with the USA what will happen. We'll see. Maybe we not have orders from USA anymore. We don't know.
Yeah, also I was thinking about an order that came from UK a couple of weeks ago, that this guy bought a patch that costed €6, and shipment was €20.
Yeah.
So we say, no, we cannot ship a patch for €20, because it's crazy.
Ridiculous.
So we added other patches, stickers, bag, and we said, okay, now we feel a little better, because I don't know. I was thinking about this guy. I don't remember if it was a guy or a girl. Anyway, that wanted this thing so much, and it was okay to spend so much for the shipment just for a patch. So I thought, if I was this guy, I would be happy if from the other side they understand that it was a sort of sacrifice. So we said, okay, let's put something more in the package.
I must say that we have a very cool customers everywhere in the world, because they understand what is happening. Sometimes they understand that we are sometimes in needs, because we need money to make other production, other projects. So it's a good kind of community for Supernatural Cat and for Malleus and for Ufomammut. We understand each other. We know there are problems, but we are not using this problem to don't make things happen. So
Yep.
we are trying to go
But
over and
maybe this guy was a billionaire and we don't know. Yeah. He just wanted a patch. Oh, let's buy it. Who cares?
Yeah, I think like that topic of community does seem to be very important at the sort of like underground DIY level. So I want to finish with getting your thoughts on the future, I suppose, really. So like thinking from, you know, whether it's as music makers or from the label perspective, putting out music, when you sort of look at the way things are now, whether it's about technology or other changes that can be happening, does anything sort of stand out that you sort of look to the months ahead and you sort of think, okay, this is what's coming on the horizon?
I don't know. I'm always thinking that we'll be back to the best things in a way or the other. I mean, when we were young, there were the vinyls. Then the CD came, and everybody, this is the future. And then today, at the end, vinyl is still there, and there are still shops selling vinyls, even if a lot of people is listening to digital music. Me too. I mean, when I go out for running with an object like this, it's easiest than bringing with you a vinyl.
On your shoulder with
exactly, or something like that. But I don't know. It's I'm
or a Walkman.
A Walkman, yeah. I'm still positive because I see that things will, in some way, people will be bored with music that has no value. Because when there's been the Black Sabbath concert, it was an experience at the end. This was a real experience, and it was on TV, it was on YouTube, it was everywhere. And when I think about this, I think about Elvis Presley in Las Vegas that was broadcasted all around the world, and it's been a magic moment because everybody wants to listen to real music. So I hope that little by little we'll...
Yeah, I'm positive too, because we see things from the inside, being also, let's say, musician, traveling for playing. We notice that there are young people coming to the concerts, and we see like something is still burning. So it's the main thing of everything, because we notice that people want reality. They don't want everything fake. I mean, everything AI or everything guided by someone else. There are still seeds of rebellion against the machine, let's say.
Yeah.
We are part of that, of course, because we live in a very complicated world, but we still see those seeds here and there, and this makes me think about in a positive way about music and the future of art as well. Yeah.
That's why we are poor.
Yeah.
I think that's all really good insight. Lou, did you have any final thoughts on that topic?
Yeah, I think we have just to resist this period, this moment, because it's just a moment. I'm always positive and to see that things will be always better, I hope.
Yeah, but this is not only music. I think it's something that you can see everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that there is people that wants to go against a Navy block to give to other people something to help them. I think this is great because it means that we all together we can do something. So it's fight against another machine, but it's always try to change things.
Yeah.
And so it will be like that in music, in cinema, in literature, everywhere. I mean, it's obvious that we live in a moment in which there's someone trying to sell you something, because it's all about money coming from big things, and we are all small humans. But if we'll go together and we'll follow a path that we like can be music or fight and try to find what you want, I think there is a positive light.
Humankind is not so bad.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah.
And also there's like drops of water, they can carve marble, something like that.
Yeah.
So little by little,
Yeah.
just do something. Yes.
My next interview was with Dan Emery of Black Matter Mastering. Certainly the only person on this episode, and the only person in general that I've ever spoken to who has at least a loose working connection with both Billie Eilish and Anal Cunt. So, my conversation with Dan Emery. Here we go. Dan, nice to meet you. I guess we've never really crossed paths before.
I don't believe so.
Yeah. But it is a very interconnected DIY underground world. What do you think of when you think of DIY music, and do you think of yourself as being part of that world?
100% definitely am part of that world. I think of DIY music as probably the purest form of artistry in the music world, in that it doesn't really allow itself so much to get tainted by commercialization. You're more likely to find people in the DIY community doing some very abstract, weird things with zero disregard for what it might do in terms of sales, because that's what they're interested in doing and that's what they're feeling like doing on that day. So I think that it's definitely, as far as art is concerned, the most direct path to people's actual emotionally driven interests.
And do you feel like people can kind of have a foot in both worlds, in the DIY and the commercial, or is it kind of like it's exclusive?
The commercial world is always trying to look at the independent and the DIY worlds to find out what works. So there's always like a short time period where certain things will work in both worlds. So I think that if you're doing it for the right reasons, you can still probably be palatable, in the commercial world, and have no regard for, convention. And I think of, and even like bigger artists, there's bigger artists that have gotten away with being DIY and just crazy, artistically weird, but then also being commercially successful. Tom Waits is a great example of that. I can't imagine anyone telling him what he needs to do on an album and it actually being considered. And he's definitely very much, done things himself in his own way. So yes and no, there is a way to do it. It's always a changing landscape, and things have a tendency to get homogenized really fast. So that thing that is really weird and out of left field today might be a normal thing in 5 years.
Thinking about you then and your personal history within music, and I know that you've got a lot of experience behind the desk, you've got a lot of experience playing music too. Was there a sort of notable point where you went, this is something that I can do that could be a career or could actually give me a significant financial return?
I don't know if I've ever had that thought yet. I don't know if that thought's even happening. No, I'm joking. I guess the goal as far as production was always for it to be a career of some sort, whether it was a well-paying career or I was going to eat ramen noodles every night. That's still, to be decided, but it was definitely always, I've always been interested in how things are put together. So when it comes to music and, productions in general, if it weren't for music, if it weren't music, I would probably be, involved in film or something like that. I've always had an interest in the machines that are being used to put these things together, the different equipment, the microphones and the cameras and the recording studios and, the sound baffles and things like that. That was always interesting. So I always planned to make a career out of it. Never really never really thought past that though, as far as like what that career could be.
And so where did Black Matter Mastering fit into all of that in terms of the process of you getting into the production side of things?
So I started recording bands when in 2001, when I was 18 or 19. And I did that, and we had a home studio at my old place for a while, and then I moved into a new place with the woman that became my wife. And when she was pregnant, I decided that I needed to have less people coming in and out of the house, and I needed to switch my focus. And I switched my focus to something where I could do it on my own timeline, my own hours, and something that was adjacent to what I was already doing. Mastering was something that I didn't quite fully understand at the time. It's always been sort of like a dark art. Even now, knowing how to do it, it's so bizarre sometimes how certain principles and properties fit in to making like a loud punk record, the things that you have to think about in that part of post-production. So it was just an interest in knowing things that I had not really paid much attention to, and something that I felt that needed to be accessible and affordable to smaller artists like myself. There's a few people out there that run mastering studios that cater to that, and seeing how they were doing stuff, it was inspiring and made me say, we need more of this. We need more of the ability for just a regular musician who works a day job to have their music still be able to sonically stand up against a major label release in terms of production value.
I've got another podcast that I've been doing research for a while called Every Album Ever with Mike and Alex. And what they do is they have a different band each episode, and they go through the discography. And so I do research for them and history, and like try and find out interesting things about the albums. And one of the things I started noticing when I started doing this regularly is I'd like look at albums and I'd look at who was involved with them, and I'd look at the producers. And when I looked at people who did mastering and I looked at their credits, so often it's just this crazy kaleidoscope of so many different styles.
Yep.
And when I was looking through at people you've been involved with, it maybe wasn't as crazy as some of the lists that I've seen, but even so, it's like you've got Anal Cunt and Billie Eilish. And that is quite an interesting contrast.
Yes. So part of what I do in Black Matter Mastering is the vinyl etchings. So if you've ever bought a vinyl LP and it had an etched side, are you familiar?
Yes.
I do those for most of the pressing plants in North America and quite a few overseas. So if you were to look at my list of people I've worked with, anything really big was probably just an etching. In which case, I would love to claim to have mastered Billie Eilish's record, but I didn't. I just did an etching for her. And she doesn't even know that it was me that did it. So we'll never meet. But the Anal Cunt one, yes, I did. I remastered one of their records. And
did you know Seth Putnam?
I did not know Seth, but I know enough people who did know him to get many stories about him.
Yeah. So how much does the playing fit into your life these days?
Not as much as it did maybe 15 years ago. I don't tour nearly as regularly as I used to. I try to fit in at least a few shows a month, but I haven't been on an actual tour since 2023. We'll do some little weekend runs here and there when we can. And it's honestly, it's just a matter of, as far as me running a business, and the drummer in Thetan also runs a business. It's hard for us to break away like when we were younger and worked for other people and we could request time off. If I take too long off, then my clients just find somebody else to work with, and so do his. And I think that that's an okay thing. I see so many artists and bands break up because they're burning out trying to do something that is beyond their means at that moment in their life. Going out on the road and being on tour for 6 weeks straight works great for some people and not for other people. At this point in life, I don't think I would want to be on the road for 6 weeks straight, even if I was making great money doing it. It's just not something that I find interesting at time. And I think that artists should still be allowed to exist in that framework of not going out on the road for, life changing periods of time. You come home from a 6-week tour playing punk shows, sleeping on every floor in the Midwest, and you don't have a job, and your bills are stacked up, and your personal relationships have taken a hit. It definitely has its pros and cons. So
let's say, imagine you've got a bunch of friends getting together. They decide they want to make music that's inspired by grindcore or, similar kinds of very confrontational, non-mainstream, non-commercial music. Thinking about like the things that you would tend to do if you want to play shows, you want to record music, you want to get things out there into the world. How do you think that the opportunities would be different now to how they might have been, say, 20 years ago?
Everything is more accessible now, I think. So it's really easy for a band to create something today and somebody on the other side of the world hear about it tomorrow. A Japanese band could make a song and post it on Bandcamp, and somehow that link finds its way into, my circle of friends, and all of a sudden I'm listening to a band that just recorded something on the other side of the world. And if I'm somebody who's, maybe like I'm a booking agent in the US, I might reach out to them. It's so much easier now for things to move around. There's so much accessibility, but with that, there's also so much more stuff out there. So more bands pop up and you hear more stuff happen. And I guess in a sense, some of the stuff that maybe people aren't really like super serious about can cloud the pool. You have a lot of it used to be, I guess, like the vetting process for bands 25 years ago was, you really had to want it. If your stuff is going to get heard by somebody on, another side of the country or the other side of the world, it's because you've really worked hard to get it there. But now it's just, you have to have a little bit of networking capabilities and know who to get it in front of. So it's easier for people to get some of these resources now, but some of these resources are being used to push the wrong things, I think. There's AI bands. It blows my mind. I was listening to some metal radio show, and they dedicated the entire episode to AI bands. It just blows my mind that that's something that people would be compelled to facilitate. I won't even really call it creating it, because it's not like they're creating it. They're facilitating the exposure of it. But I guess, if there's something and there's a capability for something to, manifest, somebody's going to do it.
Yeah.
So it's easier to get stuff around, but also there's just so much more stuff that I guess it's harder to find the genuine stuff in it.
Yeah. Yeah, the AI thing is interesting, and I feel like that if you're operating in a realm where things are more produced, then you're going to probably be more susceptible to that creeping into what you're doing. Whereas if you're making raw black metal, or You know,
Right.
something that's like intentionally abrasive. It's kind of harder to see how AI would be accepted by people.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because I remember seeing a news article not too long ago about like a one-person black metal band, and they were trying to decide if it was AI or not. Nobody had a answer for that, and it was like it was such a gray area as to if it was authentic or not. And yeah, I don't know. I don't really care for people using AI in any part of the creative process. I think it's lazy and misleading. Um, you know, even for art, people I've seen a lot of that lately, like people using AI art generators to make like, album covers or single covers. And it's like even that, it's so low effort. Like everybody's got a friend that can draw, and if you don't have a friend that can draw, then just I would rather see like a blank black block with just like a line of text as the record cover than some AI thing that's supposed to make me think someone cared enough to make it and make it look cool.
Yeah. Well, I guess in a way, there's also a case to say that it goes back to that necessity is the mother of invention. It's like if you're not good at art and you don't know anyone who is good at art, you'll maybe come up with something inventive to get around that. So like you'll do something
Right.
that's not very artistically competent, but like there'll be evidence that you thought about it in like some interesting way.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's got a camera in their pocket these days.
Yeah,
Take a picture of garbage on the ground and call that an album cover. I mean, hell, at least you're the photographer there.
indeed. Thinking about the live side of things.
Yeah.
So what do you see in terms of the way the landscapes changed for people that want to be going and playing shows, doing tours on this kind of like underground DIY level? Thinking about things in the last years like COVID, the impact of Ticketmaster. Something that Steve Austin brought up with me that no one else had mentioned to me at this point was about tolls. He told me that there are more tolls from state to state. I don't know if that's something that you've
I
noticed.
didn't know that. But then again, like I said, I last tour I did was in 2023. I believe it. I will say especially when it comes to DIY and underground music, DIY will always prevail. It always finds a way. There's always going to be a basement room or, a DIY club, or just a bar that has a shitty PA that would love to have some like abrasive grindcore band come in and bang out 31-minute songs. And, I think that there will always be a place for that as long as the expectations are realistic. It's interesting because there's always been a bit of a schism between like high production events and the underground has always had its, own kind of world where it can exist. And, even bigger artists who started out in the underground can find their way back to it easily. Whereas if you're trying to enter in like a high production value Live Nation, arena type thing, you wouldn't be able to exist in a smaller world. It just wouldn't work. The production is what feeds the shows in a lot of those cases. I don't know too many dive bars with auto tune and Pro Tools rigs for for running live backing tracks.
No, I'm
So
gonna I'm gonna ask something incredibly naive here that
okay.
you've maybe given me an idea for. So are you saying from what you just said there that like if you had some pop artist that was using auto-tune for their recordings, that the technology is available that you can actually have that work live when people are singing on stage?
Oh my God, yes. It happens. It happens. I won't say names of like artists that I know specifically that do it. Um, I've done live audio as well as recording. Being in Nashville, it's kind of hard not to find your way into some of those gigs. But yeah, the big artists. It's interesting when we look back on how we treated certain artists in kind of the turn of the digital age. And by that, I mean like the 90s when things started going into a much more like CD world. Milli Vanilli got dragged for singing to backing tracks. Pretty much every pop artist that's on stage anywhere is lip syncing. I mean, there may be like half a dozen who base their existence on the integrity of being able to get out there and sing like that every night. But for the sake of safety and insurance of, you know, not having a show bomb because someone blew their voice out in Albuquerque, you know, they're going to have, you know, their safety net. Because at that point, it's all performative. It's just, you know, they're fulfilling the need of the contract. These people want a show, so you get up there and you give them the show.
Yeah.
But yes, absolutely. The Pro Tools and Auto Tune and all of that is very, very, very prevalent in the bigger artists' live performances. 100%.
Interesting. Thinking about the future, you know, and like we've touched on AI, but for anything else, when you sort of think about the landscape for underground DIY music for the coming months and into next year, what are your sort of thoughts? Where do you see things going, or what things do you see popping up, whether good or bad or just different?
We're going to continue, you know, debating a place in production and in, you know, in art for AI. That's not a conversation that's going to end anytime soon. So I think that, you know, we'll definitely continue discussing that. But I think that we'll also be pleasantly surprised by the fact that there's enough people out there who just forego it. They don't need that. Even if they don't have all the tools that they wish they have the tools to create something that expresses what they're trying to express. So I always try to keep in my mind to lean into my shortcomings. And I hope that if anybody takes anything away from this conversation that we're having right now, that might be listening to it, considering recording their own stuff, anyone can do it. And lean into your shortcomings. If you only have one microphone and that's, you know, all you've got to work with, then make a recording that's one microphone and make it intentional. Give it intention. Make it sound like that's the way it's supposed to be. Don't try and cover it with some kind of weird, you know, processing that might work. Don't try to emulate a process and fall short. Create a new process and make that your signature. I think that there's going to be plenty of that in the future as well. It's just people creating things within the realm of their own abilities, and you know, it'll be awesome. Some of my favorite punk records sound like they were recorded in a shoe. And that's what they're supposed to sound like. So I'm happy for it.
The last interview that I did then was with Andreas Kohl of Exile on Mainstream. And as with Greg Meisenberg, I don't think I'd directly spoken to Andreas before this episode, but I did have a loose connection having interviewed Carla Colt back on episode 58, and Carla Colt are on Exile on Mainstream Records. Andreas has worked in all kinds of different realms in independent as well as corporate music. So yeah, I thought this was a great way to end things off, and I think we even ended on something of a positive tone, which was a nice moment to end the podcast on. So on to my final conversation with Andreas Kohl of Exile on Mainstream. So Andreas, thank you so much for joining me, and nice to meet you. You, it seems, have had a long career with a lot of different aspects of independent music. You've worked in magazines, fanzines, record label owner. I think you've been a booking agent. You've had other roles as well. So I imagine you're going to have all kinds of different valuable insights. So without putting any pressure on you in particular, but there will be kind of his biographical info that I want to get into. But actually, the first thing that I wanted to ask you, which is what I've been asking everybody for this episode, is about DIY music. And my question is, what is DIY music to you? How would you define it? And do you consider yourself to be part of a DIY music world?
Well, it's a question that you can answer pretty quickly. DIY means do it yourself. When it comes to music only, we can be as bold and say pretty much every music is DIY because someone is doing it themselves. If it's not AI generated, which seems to become an issue in the years to come. But so far, when you go into historically, even the poppiest, most commercial music that you can create has been created by someone. So there's always a DIY aspect to it. My understanding goes further. It's not only about music, it's a culture. It's a way of approaching things. It's a way of doing things. It's a way of kind of like disconnecting yourself as much as you can from corporate structures. It has a political aspect to it, even though I'm not very radical about it. I mean, I consider myself like an underground left-wing person, of course, like most of the people in the music business might do. But I don't have any problems touching commercial structures here and there. We can't avoid it. If we want to make our music or the stuff that we do, the records that we release or the shows that we book, if we want to make ourselves heard, we need to hijack commercial structures every now and then, and we need to use them, we need to play with them, and we also need to accept them. I mean, we're living in a capitalist society. Just putting out a record and putting it on sale is a capitalist act. So people releasing records and then claiming they're outside of the commercial world, it's not working that way. It's just like everything you do in this culture has a commercial aspect to it. DIY for me in these terms means doing as much as you can yourself to keep control over as much as you can. And it's just not a black and white thing. It's like a scale where you see yourself. And I've done this in the past. I've released records and booked shows and been on tour in like super strictly DIY manner, like doing everything myself. But sometimes a certain sound, a certain band, a certain approach requires using other structures as well. And this is when it can't be DIY as per 100%.
That makes a lot of sense. And so from that point of view of kind of like, different parameters and different considerations in terms of how DIY you want to go with one project to another, do you find, or have you found over the years that like there is a way to like mindfully navigate this terrain so that you are like making use of the system rather than sort of being sucked into the system or crushed by it?
Yeah, you're pretty right about that. You have to fill that decision with every single project that you do, and it comes with asking yourself, what is the outreach? What do you want to achieve? How far do you want to go? How many people do you want to see this? How do you approach the artistic value of it? And the more you want from each of these parts, the more you have to go into corporate structures. Just let me give you an example. You have an artist that does amazing sounds, amazing music, and they also have someone on handle that do it themselves, doing like very, very good videos, like just as an example. To make, of course, you want this video to be seen. So where you go to YouTube, which is corporate. When I was a lot younger and did a lot of PR work for other labels as well, the holy grail of achieving something with a video was MTV. And it was 100% commercial and corporate. But it provides the framework for a cultural or an artistic expression to be seen and to be heard. While other styles, you might have like a crust punk band or something that is like ultra super underground grindcore stuff. You don't even want to go into these circles. You promote these bands in the circles that they come from. So you have them playing in squad houses, which are the antithesis to being corporate. So the music and the art itself defines where you want to go with it. And to answer your question, it's the more you accept using corporate structures, the more you get sucked into it. When I use the word hijacking, it sounds a bit like a Trojan horse, but I'm not a revolution romantic saying like I can control this. No, I'm becoming part of it if I do it. What I always try to retain throughout the 30 years I'm doing this now is I always have the side of my eye looking at the exit door. So I know there is one and I can go through it whenever I want. So whether you want to call this like not being fully sucked in or being considerate about what I do, but I always keep an eye open. It's like if it becomes too much, or some of my artists, the people I work with go like, now you're going to corporate, I know there is this door and I can walk through it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that seems like a very mindful way to approach things. When I was looking through the various different roles that you've had, I noticed that you've had a couple of roles, and maybe one of them's current, which are sort of directly connected to vinyl. So evidently vinyl is very important to you. So maybe you can tell me a bit about how that aspect of the music world sort of became something that really took hold in terms of your career.
Well, growing up during mostly the 90s, vinyl was the format. This is what we wanted. Plus, another thing that might play into it, I was born on the other side of the Iron Curtain, and we couldn't get our hands on records back then. There was a few that were released, like stuff like, for whatever reason, 5150 by Van Halen got released in East Germany, and I don't know why. So when records like these came out, there was huge queues on music stores in East Germany, and we would queue just to get our hands on it. And so owning records was part of my early youth. I'd say between the age of 10 and maybe 17 or 16. That was the stuff that I wanted to have. I grew up in a household with a lot of music. My dad is a music lover. My mom is a music lover. My dad did own a reel-to-reel tape machine where we would record from TV, rock and roll music from TV to listen to it. And we've always been dreaming of records. And I remember when my dad got his first record player, must have been sometime in the early 80s. We had a record player, but we didn't have any cool records. I told the story before. It's like, when the wall came down, all the East Germans went to West Berlin or somewhere, and we got this like 100 German marks welcome money. I grabbed that money, walked straight over the street into World of Music store, and the first thing I bought was a St. Vitus record. That was the thing. And then the other stuff followed. Then I bought Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath and all the Doors records and stuff. But that was, I think, in the first 2 years after the Berlin Wall crumbled and the Iron Curtain was torn down, I bought more records than ever after. It was intense. So, cutting the story short, vinyl is interwoven with my life, and it's when the vinyl record disappeared from the shelves, I just simply didn't accept it. I was like, I bought CDs, yes, I did, and I reviewed CDs, but whenever there was vinyl available, I bought it. Luckily, my music taste back in the days when vinyl disappeared was very much into soul and garage punk, and these were the labels that kept releasing on vinyl. It was like labels like Touch and Go or Crypt Records. They always released on vinyl. They never disappeared. They never vanished from my world. They probably vanished from shelves in big chain stores, but you could still get your hands on it. So, and then I started the label. I worked in PR, and when I turned 40, I was like, I'm not gonna do PR until I'm 50 or 60. I don't want to be that boring old fart selling young kids the hot shit. And I got interested in manufacturing, and I was like, I would love to manufacture records. So, and that's basically how it worked. It's like I closed the company, Southern Records Germany, exactly on my 40th birthday. And 2 weeks later, I joined a pressing plant as sales and QC manager. Started the job after a couple of months. I took 3 months off, but I got a call from them right after I closed the joint. And since then, I've been involved with manufacturing vinyl.
So a lot of the people that I talk to within sort of underground independent music circles either have got jobs that are sort of completely outside of the world of music. Like sometimes I'll interview musicians and they've got like tech jobs. And then, you know, making weird avant-garde music is like the thing they do on the side that doesn't have any kind of financial dependence to it. And then maybe there's other people that I'll interview and they might sort of have other roles that are like maybe they're a musician and they do some recording, or they're a label owner and they do some mastering. Not necessarily so many people that I talk to are involved in so many different strands of the music world. Something I was interested in, I feel like you might have a particular kind of unique story for this, is what I've been asking people, particularly for this episode, is like, how precarious is it to dedicate your life to being involved with underground music? Perhaps for you, there's maybe strands to that because you are involved in various different things, and perhaps to the point that you're making in the beginning, aspects of them may be more or less independent than others.
Which is the truth. I mean, I also talk to a lot of people, and we also know when you want to make a living in this culture, in this business, it is tough. It's like, even if you're like a million selling artist, then you might make it. But if you look at like very, very, very successful artists, you still see how many other people they finance with their work. So up to a certain level, it is really a struggle. But what I always did is I consider myself a little bit of a workaholic. I like to work for the money I make. So it's just like this, like probably an old school Protestant work ethic, even though I'm not Protestant. But it's just like that's probably the German or European view to it. And that's why I took on so many different aspects. It was like, okay, running an independent label like Exile on Mainstream could have become something that I can make a living off, but not a very luxury living. But I never wanted it to be that way. It's just like, I was like, when I want to do this commercially successful, I need to make so many compromises, and it's not going to be the same. It's not what I want. So with running the label, I was like, okay, the label needs to be financed. It's not making enough money, but I need to find a job that is somehow connected to it, where I can combine both things. And it's not a materialistic way. Like you own a label, you work at a pressing plant, so you can get the pressings cheaper. That was not the case. It was more like, I don't want to do a day job that I probably hate and then come home after the day job and compensate all this hate into making music, releasing music, or something like that. I just wanted to live a life where everything like kind of lines up somehow and works together, and trying to incorporate different aspects. And in the long run, there's going to be enough money to make a living out of it. And that luckily worked somehow.
Thinking about the way that you choose to do things yourself, and think about the label in particular, think about Exile and Mainstream. As a label owner, and I guess, you know, from the various experience that you've had with other labels, how do you sort of view the way that your label should ethically operate, both in terms of the way it deals with artists and deals with customers?
Well, we have a very unique way of dealing with artists, which is also a bit historic. In the first years, I'd say like until 2012, 2013, the label operated mostly like a standard label. You would go out, or it was me and my wife, we would go out, we like a band, we sign the band, we make a contract. We pay royalties, we do royalty statements every now and then. and then we pay out the bands. It was a standard approach. And then when I started working in a manufacturing business, I figured I don't have enough time to give it kind of like a proper frame and more than I could provide. So I talked to a few of my artists, one in particular, Connie Ox, singer-songwriter that I really like. And I was like, I might close the label because it's not going to satisfy me anymore if I can't give it what it would need. And he was like, you can't just close it. This is like Exile on Mainstream has become some kind of like a family or a tribe or something where each and every artist know each other and help each other out. And it was like a framework where most of the artists said, you can't close this down. So we all sat together and it's like, how could we run this in a different way? And this is how it's run nowadays. It's like the label provides a framework. I do a little bit of PR, but we share all the costs. In practice, it works like this. I see a band or a band approaches me that I like, or we get together. I use the word, it happens. Like all the artists on this label just happened to me. There was never an active plan. I don't like getting demos sent or whatever. I just meet people and go like, these are good guys and the music is great. Let's do something together. There's even people that I've known for 10, 15 years, and all of a sudden I go like, let's do a record. Like this band Crowskin from that I released last year. They're from Potsdam. I've known these guys since 15 years. I've been on 100 shows of them, and all of a sudden it's like, why haven't we done a record together? So it's like, yeah, let's do it. And so this is how we decide. And then what we basically do is we sit together. It's like, how many records do we need? How many can each party sell? Like the band, when they're on tour, I can sell an amount through the web shop and some distributors and record stores. How do we want to pack it? What is this going to be? How do we print it? Is there any kind of like fancy embossing on the cover, or is it a standard cover? So we decide for this all, and then we decide this is the amount that we do. Then I calculate it through, just make a kind of like a quote with it. And then we decide for a unit price based on this quote that is just the standard manufacturing price, and each of the parties throws in their amount that they can, and for the same amount they get the records. So that's basically it. There's no contracts, there's no exclusivity to it, none of the bands is bound to this label in some way. I don't even claim rights. It's like all the rights stay with the bands. They can do whatever they want with it. They can release it digitally. If a band releases a record on Exile on Mainstream and they want to do the same record the next week on some fucking major label, they're free to do it. And it just works well that way. It's just like, it's just like a bunch of dudes and girls hanging out together and having a music barbecue or something. And just not that we grill sausages, we make records. Everything on Exile is not only the music. It's just like how people behave, how you understand them. It doesn't mean that they need to be ultra super friendly people that you always want to hang out with, but if I get the feeling that something is transported through their music that exceeds just making music, then we have some kind of connection. It sounds pretty esoteric. Maybe it is.
Yeah, but you know what? It also seems to tie into some of the other conversations I've had for this episode, where I've asked people about DIY music, and one of the things that sort of popped up is that there's a sense of community that comes through with it, and that's maybe something that you lose the larger the scale gets.
Yeah. I think that's probably how I grew up. It's like I've always been seeking this kind of community vibe, because that's when you're younger, when you're hanging out with people and you listen to music, you inspire each other. There's always community attached to it, and maybe that is something that I was, or not maybe, it's just like definitely something that I've been always seeking for, is just like this community approach behind it. And that comes back to the very start of this interview. It's just like that also means DIY for me. Like not only doing everything myself, but doing it together with people that I like, that I trust, that are my friends, that are family, and yeah, my tribe somehow.
Yep. Another practical thing connected to the label, and you'll have a much better inside view than I do. As everyone has probably noticed, I've noticed that shipping costs have been going up, particularly international. Like, I was in Prague, Killing Joke put out a special edition of Hasana's from the Basement of Hell. It's like, I have to have every single Killing Joke vinyl. I instantly bought this, and it was already quite expensive, and the shipping was quite expensive. And then it came into Prague, and then I had to pay extra shipping for it to come in. I was like, fucking hell, I'm paying like 3 times the price of the actual vinyl. I noticed on the web store for Exile and Mainstream, you've got a European and you've got a US store. How have you navigated that aspect of international shipping, and what have you noticed? What kind of insights do you have about how these prices are going up?
Well, you're right. It's significant what happened in the past years, even though if you spare a closer look, you would figure out that not the shipping prices in general go up, but the restrictions on certain sizes and weights go up. For instance, we had in Germany, we have a special like media mail shipping level at DHL. It's called the Warenpost or Warensendung. That used to be like 32 to 32 centimeters, and you could ship a record for €4 into the US. The same thing is still existing, and the price hasn't increased significantly, but they did shrink it. They made it to 32 to 22 now, and it doesn't fit a record anymore. You have to now ship it as standard parcel. It pisses me off to no end that we have to pay so much for shipping, but I refuse to see it as a threat on our industry by the big courier services, because we're such a small industry. They just don't care about us. It's just like that's what it is. They didn't even spare a thought how difficult it is for a web shop to ship a record from the US or to the US, because they have bigger fish to fry. That's the thing. But it still I still think it's putting a heavy pressure and a serious threat on the mail order business worldwide. Now it becomes even more difficult with shippings to the US with the tariffs in place, which is an unsolved issue. Most of the couriers like DHL, FedEx, UPS have suspended small parcel shipping to the US for the reason that up until tariffs got in place, general tariffs got in place, small parcels were exempt from incoming tax in the US. And now the US is trying to apply their usual 10% on every parcel that comes in. But there is no infrastructure to actually invoice it, charge it, or whatever. And there's a big chaos. And what also comes on top of it, as per international law, information media products are generally exempt from tariffs, like books, magazines, records, DVDs, CDs. And it baffles me to no end to see that obviously not even the official authorities in the US know about this law. They just try to apply their tariffs, and then the couriers go like, yeah, if they apply to this, we're going to charge our customers. And no one from DHL or UPS seems to walk against us like, hey, we have an international law. It's just like, these products are exempt from tariffs, so we're not paying you. And then the US authorities probably say, oh yeah, then you can't ship it into the US. It is like, it's like early capitalism, or it's even feudalism what we have here. You just go like, what? I mean, we have that has been in place since whatever 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And all of a sudden it's wiped off, and not even with a law. It's just people forgot about it.
Yeah.
And that is a huge issue and a huge problem. But for some people, there is a solution. Just don't buy at mail orders, go to record stores or go to concerts and buy the records there.
Yeah, well, the concert...
If you can.
Yeah. Well, as long as the bands can get into the countries to then sell their records.
Yeah, that's a whole other story. Oh, don't get me started on that.
But that's a lot of valuable insight. A lot that I didn't actually know about there. So I'm glad to have got that insight from you. Thinking about the future in the sort of months ahead and going into 2026, when you sort of look at the landscape for independent underground DIY artists, is there anything that you sort of see coming on the horizon, whether it's good or bad or just changes that you're envisaging?
Well, we have here it comes. We have Trump in charge since over 100 days, and I'm putting this out to the world. Where is the good political violent hardcore bands? It is this is like, how can a dude like this guy run a country and we don't get good hardcore? Can you explain this to me?
That's a very, very valid point, because I have thought about that recently. I've thought like, oh, this is also terrible. But hey, when Reagan was in office, there was loads of cool music that came out from that.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, look at the history of like SST records and even like all these hardcore labels from the 90s, Equal Vision, Revelation. They were so pissed off about whatever. And there's a lot of bands that I didn't agree with by the time, but they were pissed off. And all the people I see nowadays musically being pissed off, all the old farts, it's like this. It's Bruce Springsteen being pissed off and Green Day. There's a kudos to them to actually raise their voice, which is, I really like to see this. But where's the new bands? I mean, when Trump was in charge the first 4 years, a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, now we're going to get some good punk rock. And it didn't happen. So when you ask me about what I think about the future, this is my question. Like, where are you kids? Be pissed off, smash things. Don't smash the Capitol, maybe do something else, but it's like smash a mic stand or a drum kit and be violent on stage. It's like, I go to shows, I know a lot of new bands and they're all good, but it's like, I don't know when I was in a club the last time and I felt danger. I want to have this back.
I love it. What a fantastic note to end on. Und ich soll auch sagen, wenn ich mit einer Deutsche sprechen, denke ich, dass ich ein bisschen Deutsch benutzen sollen. Also hier wir sind.
Very good, very good. Almost accent free.
Hey, my time in Germany was a bit more productive when it comes to learning German than my time in the Czech Republic was with learning Czech. That didn't get me very far.
I can imagine. Yeah.
Andreas, that was really insightful, really valuable, and it was really cool to chat with you. So thank you again so much for your time. And that was that. So whatever comes next, episode 100 DIY special in the can. As I say, you can now go and support on patreon.com, whatever comes next. If you would like to get access to all 6 of these interviews in full, there's probably about 3 hours worth of interview content that is never going to be anywhere else. So if you want to go there and support, you can do that, as long as getting various other little perks if you sign up to Patreon for just £5 a month. But aside from all of that, it is time for me to sign off. This has been Tom Osman at Whatever Comes Next.
the place that I can't find it anywhere. I can't find it. I can't find it. I can't find it. I can't find it. I've looked everywhere except the place that I can't find it anywhere. It's time wearing you down.